Hello everyone, this is Richard. We're going to talk about the adolescent homework performance in mathematics and science, the personal factors and teaching practices. As you guys might always wondering, which type of students can score the highest on the test? Is it going to be the one that is more genius, or is it going to be the one that studied most? Or is it going to be male? Is it going to be female? Or the ethnicity matters? Yeah, we are always questioning about this. Sometime in our student life, sometimes we will just question ourselves, why is my friend always score a higher score than me? Or why am I always score a higher score than my friend? A classical educational research provides empirical evidence of the positive effect of doing homework on academic results, and nonetheless, when this effect is analyzed in detail, they are inconsistent, and in some cases, contradictory results. The characteristic and effect of homework have been widely studied both from a general perspective and a specific area such as relationship between homework and academic performance. Family involvement, the role of teachers, student perception, and the way students manage to do their homework. Research about the relationship between homework and academic performance has evolved from a positivist and experimentalist position to a general conclusion of this research. And the general conclusion of this research is that there is a positive relation between the homework and academic performance. But recent work has led to a profound change in this general conclusion. And we're going to talk about this, and this is going to be the introduction. Okay. The methods. Which method are we using in this experiment? First, we're going to talk about this is a cross-sectional studies. The n is equal to 7725. The student involved a sample of 7725 second-year secondary education students in Austria, Spain, with a mean age of 13.78 years, standard deviation of 0.82. The sample was composed of 47.2% of the girls, 90.6% was a Spanish national, and 72.9% were a standard school year for their age. While 27.1% were 1 to 2 years behind, these students were from 353 classes in 148 different schools. The evaluation included all registered students at this education level in the region of 2010 to 2011 academic year. Tests were administered as part of the official annual education evaluation program by the school authorities and teacher following official guidelines. Each student completed a mathematics and science test, each within 24 items, and a homework evaluation questionnaire. The homework evaluation included questions on the daily time spent on homework and the level of efforts, with responses categorized into multiple choice options. Efforts was measured using 3 items, forming a unidimensional scale called Cronbach. Homework independence was assessed through a question about the level of help needed, creating binary variables. Academic performance in mathematics and science were measured using a detailed item pool distributed across 8 test booklets, with each student completing 48 items in 2 15-minute sessions. The tests were scored using a 2-dimensional items response model, standardized to a mean of 500 and a standard deviation of 100. A Cronbach ranging of 0.82 to 0.88. And the analysis is that with the aim of improving the representation of students who actually do the assigned homework, the 2.4% of the students who never do homework were removed from the analysis. For this reason, the multi-level analysis looked at 7451 students rather than the 7725 originally evaluated. So if we look at this graph, again, if you cannot see the graph, I'll attach this poster at the very end of my presentation so you guys can take a deep look at the graph. But essentially, this is the 7725 students. As we can tell, 2.4% never done the study, and 8.8% of students study every few days, and almost 90% of the people study every day, almost every day. And down below, it's the 7451 students. And you can kind of tell, like, like their graph and their distribution. Yep. Now we're talking about the results. So in the figure 2, you can kind of tell the top of the curve is between 90 to 100 minutes per day of homework of all subjects combined, and this may be considered the most effective amount of time. As from this point, our results begin to decline. However, the most effective is not always the most efficient. For example, for student classes where the amount of homework is 50 minutes, results in the middle of the scale, which is 504 points in science. You can tell in figure 3. And the gain expected in science for a student in classes where the amount of homework is 70 minutes is around 8 of the standard deviation, which is 517 points. But the gains between 70 to 90 barely reach 3% of the standard deviation. This means that the small gains require 2 hours more homework per week, which is a large time investment for such small gains. For that reason, assigning more than 70 minutes homework per day does not seem very efficient. As the expectation of improved results is very low, in the case of mathematics, the curve is more pronounced, but the interpretation is similar. Around 1 hour per day of homework seems to be sufficient time to achieve satisfactory results. So we can kind of tell this is the dots line for figure 2 is for mathematics, and for science, it's the solid line. And they all have the maximum effectiveness in between the range of 60 to 110. Figure 3 is the dots line is student without help, and the solid line is student who need help. We can sort of tell that student don't need help will generally have the higher score than the student who need help. And there's some detailed data right here. And for figure 3, let's elaborate more on this. Figure 3 allows two interpretations to be made. First, student autonomy is more effective as it predicts 54 points more than for those students who need frequent or constant help. In addition, dependent students hardly score more than an average, despite showing significant commitments. Second, autonomous students are more effective, especially at higher level of ability. For example, to score 475 points, a dependent student would need on average 30 minutes per day more than an autonomous student. However, to score 500 points, the dependent student will have to spend 41 minutes more than the autonomous student. In the other word, a dependent student who spends 70 minutes a day on homework would expect results in 50 percentile, whereas the autonomous student who spend the same amount of time will expect to score in the 70% percentile. In the science, the curve follows the same pattern as mathematics. While noting that students who do homework without help are predicted to score 500 points with less than 25 minutes per day, the difference between student profiles is greater. To score 500 points, a student who needs help with homework spends 15 minutes more per day than a student who does homework without help. As a whole, results may be interpreted as follows. Once the adjustment variables are controlled, the homework variable with most impact on the test are doing homework without help, and frequency of doing homework assigned by teacher. And we can kind of tell in this table, which is like all the variable on it. Yeah, the previous estimation do not take into account that compared with students who need frequent or constant help. Students who do homework without parental involvement make more efforts and spend less time on homework, a variable that is negatively associated with success. It is clear that once the adjustment variables are controlled, the difference in terms of frequency of homework assigned is close to 20 points, whereas the difference between students who need help with homework and those who do not is around 30 points. Therefore, the combined effect of variables related to student behavior towards homework and teaching practices on school grades may cause difference in the region of 50% of the standard deviation in the scale of the school results. And the results in science are not presented in the chart but the combined effect of these variables is a little more than moderate and is about 40% of the standard deviation. Strength. Let's talk about the strength of the article. First, it's studied very in-depth study and question, provide a lot of citation and evidence from others. We can tell that in the article, the author have a lot of citation in it, and we can tell that he definitely have fun different reference. As we put the reference at the bottoms, we can tell that this is not all the reference, and because of the space limitation, I cannot put all the reference on on the poster, but not the professor, sorry, the author definitely include a lot of citation and evidence so that we can tell that this poster have the credential. And it also provides a lot of graph and data to support the statement, so it makes me really clear that I know which data is for which. And just based off the graph, I can tell, oh yeah, this is a very simple data that when I see it, I understand what this is. And it also include a lot of variables, as we can tell in the table right here. It includes like the gender, like does it repeat it? How's the efforts, the homework, how homework has done. It include a lot of variables, which I think is very good. Some of the weaknesses, though, however, I feel like there's less variety since 90% of the student examined are Spanish students. Also, they're all from the same area. So I feel like if the author can include different area with different kind of students, like let's say Asian, white, black, different ethnicity of students, that'll be great. And yeah, another weakness is that it did not prove the correlation and the causation. That's a for my question is that let's say if we force a student to study 90 to 100 minutes per day, then it's still going to have the same effectiveness that a student who study 90 to 100 minutes per day spontaneously. And that's just my weaknesses. That's just the weaknesses I can think of for this article, which I feel like they can elaborate more on this. The biggest takeaway for this article is that study wise, learn every chapter deeply, don't skip any concept. As we can tell in the graph, study every day is definitely better than just cram everything at the very end. Also, we can tell that study every chapter deeply. So if you have less question for the chapter, that's it. If you have the stronger fundamentals, then you're going to score a higher score because you have a stronger fundamental. Because you have a stronger fundamental, so you have less question to ask. So you're always going to score higher than the student who have a lot of question because they're probably not as familiar with the material as you. And also just study every day because practice make it perfect. As the results indicate, we know that study every day is better than just study one day and you study like 24 hours per day, like you pull all-nighter. It's always better to distribute your time every day. The conclusion is that the relationship between homework and academic result is not linear, as we can tell. The data suggests that spending 60 minutes per day doing homework is a reasonable and effective time. As we can tell in the graph, even though studying 90 to 100 minutes per day, it's the most effective time. But as we say previously, as you goes by, the standard deviation is just getting less. That means that maybe from 40 to 60, you only have the same amount of time from 40 to 60, from 40 to 60 minutes of like your improvement is gonna increase more than you study for 90 to 100 minutes. So spending 60 minutes per day doing homework is reasonable. Furthermore, the results indicate that both the quantity of homework and the frequency of the assignments are related to the academic results. The conclusion is that when it comes to homework, how is more important than how much. Once individual efforts and autonomous work is considered, the time spent becomes irrelevant. This data is inconsistent with the central position of efforts and predicting academic performance. In addition, autonomy when doing homework may be linked to process the self-regulation, and these have been found to be positively associated with performance. Yep, that's all of my presentation. Here's the reference of the articles. Thank you for listening.